Super bank of it.
There he is. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Hey,
Yay! Is that a dog? Sorry.
all right, everybody, we are live now. So welcome everybody that's joining. We are here with cast and crew of Assassins. So everybody say hi. We'll start it up.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Howdy.
Hi.
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 Tony, you want to get things started?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to all the cast and crew of Assassins. Thank you guys for joining us, and everybody else who's out there might be listening in and who's currently self-isolating at home and is sick of Netflix. Thank you for joining us.
Don't say such a thing.
Yeah, this is a little bittersweet, of course, because of our virtual reunion, and it's only just over a week ago that we had our last performance. I'm not going to say our final performance because, of course, we're working very, very hard on getting this back up sooner than later, and as soon as the coronavirus starts to kind of agree with us or disagree with us and goes away, we're hoping to get us all back together and do this again and finish what we started. It was a incredible show. Not sure how many people out there who might be listening in saw it and how many people didn't want to know something about it. So we just wanted to open this up for questions, thoughts, etc. We're going to have maybe a little bit of a preview of a song later that will kind of get everybody involved in. So I guess John's moderating technically. So John, are there any questions or things that are coming up from our friends out there?
Yeah, we get a few questions that already came in. I'll read a statement first. This is from Peter Goldberg. He is our photographer, and he's been doing photography for us forever. And he just said, when you see good theater, it gets into your head, it connects with you, moves you, your brain gets charged and buzzed. We're capable of feeling empathy, compassion, anger, disdain, and even humor if you watch these assassins rant around on stage. Yes, because it's a very human story, and whether we like it or not, we are all connected. In these trying times, it is important to remember what connects us all will give us strength and hope. We are all in this together. Banks Gam and Stephen Sondheim. That's Peter Goldberg.
Peter Goldberg.
Beautiful.
And then first question here we get from Steve Kidd. He says, other than Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wilkes Booth, between whom many parallels have been drawn, and Fromm and Hinckley, who share a beautifully disturbing song, which other assassins from different eras remind you as a cast of each other?
Wow.
Get out the Wikipedia.
So I leave that to who didn't we get there? That's Gabe. What do you think?
So is the question, who does Gateau remind me of in the cast?
Oh no. I need a drink.
Is that the question?
Or is it like, who's the closest assassins if you were going to play, like, match them up?
Oh, that makes more sense. That makes
Right?
more sense.
I think other than the killing, I can relate and completely stand back.
Yeah.
If you take the killing away, I understand completely what that man is thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he didn't. Yeah, exactly. If you take away the amateur piloting of a 747 into the White House, which is a big takeaway, a lot to take away.
So if I could do it today, I might think about it.
Well, Gabe, what about you? And tell us a little bit about your insights into Charlie Gateau, your personal journey as Charlie Gateau.
So I would say you come across the obvious, which is like, this man was very disturbed. This man was not well. But getting deeper into sort of, I think, our obsession with fame and how even in 1880, there was sort of a culture of anyone can make it. It's a very American idea of anyone can be famous, anyone can be notorious. And I think Gateau just had tried a lot of things to be famous and it hadn't worked.
Yeah.
So he did what he thought would work, which is kill the president. It's sort of like what Vic says. You do what you have to do. I don't relate to that, but I see it in our culture today in lesser forms, in people who embarrass themselves on YouTube, or people who I actually just saw a video of a guy holding, has anyone seen this, a harmonica in his mouth, and then he has friends hurt him?
No.
And
What?
yeah, so he tapes a harmonica on his mouth, and then people hit him with baseball bats, or they throw, big heavy bowling balls at him, and he can't scream, he just makes the sound of the harmonica. And it's
I'm
well
almost
followed.
concerned about you and how you find that
Wow.
as kind of thing. So that's a point.
It was on Facebook or something. I
Oh,
don't
is
know.
it? Yeah.
Wow, my
Anybody
feet.
can stumble upon it.
Yeah.
But it's,
Well, yeah. No, I mean, it's certainly the resonances and the parallels are too much with us. I know that Steve asked not about the most famous amongst our assassins, but Alex, how would you, tell us a little bit about the playing probably the easiest to revile amongst all of the most famous of the assassins, and what that has been like.
That's quite a contest.
It is. It hasn't always been easy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I did a lot of research early on, and I kind of stopped at a certain point when I was reading a book about him, and there was a passage about how he delighted in killing cats. At which point, it's hard because then you just want to write the person off as a sociopath, because it's pretty much these are the signs that someone can engage with society. And in this piece, he's very, very much, at least as far as we took him, really had the larger picture in mind, and really had the idea that the best way to live on is through this infamy, this terrible, terrible acts. Imagine that is next to impossible, I think, on some level. We can only do so much personalization. I have no desire to be remembered for terrible acts. I do, of course, like all of us, probably want to be remembered for something at some point.
Yeah.
So that's as far as you can only personalize so much when you're playing someone who has the desire to bring everything down and to watch the whole thing burn. So.
Yeah.
I got a comment here. It says, "Hey, can Gabe drop the link for those harmonica videos?"
Let's keep
What
that
if it
up.
turns out?
Keep this PG-13.
I'll look him up.
And I don't think Andrew is here, but there's a comment from Yi Yen Chen. "Hi, Andrew. It's your cousin-in-law from Houston. So stay safe through this rough time. Looking forward to the next time we see each other, whenever that may be." Let's see what else we got here. Sarah
We'll
Feely.
pass that message on to Andrew. Absolutely. No, but he couldn't be with us today, unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad.
Sarah Feely says, "Would you be open to a sing-along?"
That might be
Well,
hard to
speaking
pull
of
off.
which,
Funny you should
yeah,
mention
so funny you should mention that. Eden, where's Eden?
I'm right here.
Eden, can we get a preview of what you're working on?
Yes, I wrote this with Michael, the guy who.
He's in the chat right now, but his audio isn't working at the moment.
Okay, all right.
Oh.
That's the way I prefer it, frankly. So, since I have the cast all here, they know this. We have a little Facebook called Gam Assassins. And you're going to get the lyrics tomorrow with instructions of how to film, so that way we can actually do the entire opener Gam-centric.
Oh.
Give us a hint.
goodness.
All right, ready? Hit it.
Teaser.
Oh, no, you can't to me. The technology. Oh, my God, the technology. I got to do this right. Got to do it right.
What? Oh my goodness.
You only get a little taste. Just a little taste. I'm not going to do the whole thing, just a small part. But there's your beginning. This is the opening number. Michael going.
What?
So I'm playing this on accordion very well. And then I give the accordion to Helena. And then I find someone in the audience and I go, "Hey pal, feeling blue, don't know what to do. Hey pal, I mean you. Yeah, you must be in a quarantine. No job, covered bare.
Ouch.
Oh my
Your
God.
life, solitaire. Please sneeze over there. It's standard in a quarantine. out for all the quarantine. Some guys sit in bars and snicker. Those guys often find they're sicker, quicker. He says, hey, how much
All right.
is that toilet paper? And I say, $4.50, $400. Okay, give me. Last part, that's all you get. Hey, kid, college closed, dream girl, indisposed. Don't get diagnosed. Remain inside your quarantine. That's what you get. Last part. This is hard for all of us. I know those notes. Everybody's got to try to stay healthy. Wash your hands, stay home, keep everything clean. Everyone cooperate. Just stay home and isolate. Everybody fighting COVID-19. I think.
All right. All right. Well, we'll look forward to the everybody getting to pitch in with that and then putting that out there, and hopefully, who knows what will happen with it from there. Mr. Sondheim might weigh in, and
Harvard on the parody.
He's not even
we'll
on
have the whole musical rewritten.
And I'd like to thank Michael, who did a whole lot, and he's done a tremendous job. So you're really gonna like it. There'll be a watch party. We'll have fun.
Michael, I think your audio is working now. If you want to say hi, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it muted until the headphones were running, so there wasn't.
Oh, good.
There he is.
Let's see. Somebody else was asking. They said Assassins was quite the ambitious first musical. Any more musicals in the GAM's future, perhaps?
Sure. Not in the immediate future, but absolutely. There's. I think it's many of us discovered who are not exactly, all that experience in the musical theater genre. It's especially this one is really a great play that has a lot of great music in it, and there's no reason why we can't, continue on in this part of our art form. So we'll see down the road, and ones that fit us and fit the space as well as this one has, and with this group of people, I would make anything.
Excellent. Let's see. Oh, here's one right here. We got Kevin Martin says Assassins is one of the all-time favorites of mine. Curious if Lila Kane could speak a bit on Sondheim's musical influences throughout the show.
Yes.
What was that question?
If you could speak a bit on Sondheim's musical influences throughout the show.
And who influenced him?
I think maybe looking at how the different kinds of American styles he's doing throughout, what he's doing in each song.
Oh yeah, I'm very clever. The '70s stuff, for the duet, the March stuff that he did. Everything is, the stuff that sounds like John Wilkes Booth, that sounds like Civil War kind of stuff. So he was very particular in everything that he did, making sure that it's in the right time frame.
Yeah, it goes from, you've got John Philip Sousa, you've got Aaron Copland, you've got the Carpenters, as Lila pointed out, in the '70s. He's changing very, not so subtly throughout. The pastiche of putting all of that, of weaving together a history of American musical forms as well. And then the Cakewalk, of course, those hanging. It's each ballad is a bit different, and it's quite an amazing, not only a walk through American political history, but a walk through American musical history as well.
And then we also said the last number, or the penultimate number, Something Just Broke, sounded kind of like Philip Glass or ethereal sounding music. So he borrows from everybody.
That's interesting to say that. Even that to me, that number was always the only one that really felt truly Sondheim.
Yeah.
And the fact that it had the typical things you would expect to hear from Sondheim, the sort of fugue-like interweaving, and had a lot of the dissonance that you come to expect. So it felt to me like that was the moment where he dropped the mask of pastiche and allowed.
I think Scene 16 is a lot like that too.
Yeah.
Scene 16
I just
where
have a
he
question that's the corollary to this. A question just came in on a text to me about for you guys, the singers, and with your experience, how and we talked a lot about this during rehearsal, but how is singing Sondheim in particular and this musical different from maybe some of the other musicals you've done? What is it about his music that? Go ahead, Helena.
Or anything else with Sondheim, the words are first. He feels like a poet first, and the music is informed by the lyrics instead of the music informing the lyrics. I feel like with a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein's, it's beautiful. It's beautiful work, but it's so poetic. While Sondheim makes things so speech-like. And it's easy to act because it sounds like he writes out rhythms as if someone was singing it. So it is different. Yeah.
It seems to be more character driven than any other musical I've done. It seems to be that he doesn't necessarily care if the song is lyrical or what the song is, as long as it enhances and drives the character and the plot of the show.
Yes.
Yeah, and the precision of it is both helpful and also challenging. Like, there's very little room, I think, to like make notes go a little longer or shorter, and you kind of have to follow the directions. But on the other hand, it's kind of like Shakespeare in that he writes it out with its own sort of internal instructions for how to perform it. So as long as you are good with following those, you can kind of get it right, I hope.
And we actually kind of bemoan this, but it's also a wonderful thing, I think, a lot in rehearsal, which is
like the tablets.
You get musicals and people repeat phrases over and over again. And he repeats ideas, but the phrasing is different almost every time.
Every time.
So you
Or it'll
really
be
have
like,
to be on your toes for what's coming next.
Yeah. Like everybody's got the right. We say so many, I mean, we don't say that many different versions, but they're so close. And each one of them has a slightly different thing that it's saying.
Half step here, half step there. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And,
and the words and the, Oh.
I'm sure if you interviewed Stephen Sondheim, you would find like there's a reason why it's a half step.
Oh,
absolutely.
So, the man's mind is a maze. He's amazing.
What about that from for Emily and Millie and Lila? What about musically? Getting away from lyrics a little bit, but what was it like to play it and learn it musically?
Yeah.
Well, you want to go first?
Sure.
Trial by fire.
Me?
Are you there, Em? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. So the question was, what would play the music?
Yeah. Like different, like what makes playing Sondheim's music different than other musicals you've worked on?
Yeah, so I had worked on a couple more rock style musicals. So that, in terms of playing, it was a lot different because very much chord based in those Rocky Horror, Carrie musicals are the ones that both recently worked on too. And in that way, with Sondheim, it's so much more particular, like we were saying with the lyrics and with everything that everyone's singing. And it doesn't necessarily match up. It really doesn't. It comes together at the right moments. I think like what Tom was saying, because it's so character driven. He wrote it so that in those moments where the music is written for it comes together with the actors, those are the moments that you're like, oh, that's so crazy. Those moments where they drift apart. But to learn that, it was very challenging because you have to go over things really meticulously so that you're in sync. And it might not sound in sync, but that's when you know you are in sync.
I would add to that it seemed to me that every single time, and I've worked on a couple Sondheims before, but this one in particular, because it was going to lull you into the sense that something was going to be predictable, and then the second you thought it was going to be predictable, it would do something really different musically. So if your fingers wanted to go to a certain chord structure because that's what you thought it was going to be, guaranteed that was not what it was. And so I think that little sort of throwing you off balance is so calculated in this musical in particular, because that's what the musical does overall. Everything is the shift of sound. You think you're going one way, but you're going. So it was supportive music.
Well, it's all the polychords, and it's all the time signatures that change because everything is conversational. and so there's really no patterns that you can discern all the time. And it's because the key changes are brutal. You know, nobody wants to play an F sharp major. Why can't you write it in G flat? It's easier. And all the accidentals that you find. So it's unlike the last Sondheim musical I worked on was a Little Night musical where it was purposely written, everything was in 3 or some variation of 3. But this one's totally different. But I think it's all the richer for that, because when you finally, when you master it and you know it's coming up and you feel like you can do it, it's just more fulfilling, I think.
And if somebody just posted in the chat, they said just a suggestion, but I think just because there's so many people in the chat right now, if people aren't talking, just have their mics muted. There's a lot of background noise, and then when you're talking, you can obviously just unmute. We got a couple more
headphones, I think that's too.
questions here. Let's see, right here from Michael Green. For the lucky ones who get to see the show, what do you hope?
I gotta head out. Bye.
Oh, bye. Bye, Niall. He says he has a digital. Wow, I can't think of what he said. He's off. Anyway, for the lucky ones who get to see the show, what do you hope your audience took away from it? Oh, now it's a little too quiet. Tony, you gotta unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I gotta do. I'm sorry, I got caught up in the technology gap. Yeah, well, obviously, this season at the GAM has been programmed very specifically to look at these kind of quintessential American stories, and this play in particular with the play we did earlier in the year, which was called JQA, which kind of began at the founding, at least the founding by the of America as a nation. As the United States of America from in the late 18th century. And then this one, of course, picks up where that one leaves off. That one left off at the eve of the Civil War. And this one picks up right there with Lincoln and Booth and takes us through at least to the end of the 20th century. And then, we're kind of filling in the gaps from there. So it's been a very deliberate season about looking at American history and then how is it resonating for us today. And this play, we kept saying as we were rehearsing it, or at least I did, that I couldn't think of a more apt play to be presenting right now. So I hope that for those lucky ones that got to see it, and we're hoping many more who will in the very, very near future, a real kind of a chance to think about how that history is resonating with us today. The past is really never past. And as I think Gabe was pointing out earlier, as we look at, we haven't seen very, very, thankfully, of course, that there hasn't been a serious attempt on a president's life since the Hinckley attempt on Reagan in 1981, and may there never be another one. But we have seen, of course, a proliferation of shooting and violence by other means that somehow manifests itself in a society in an even more destructive way. And so that's the world we're living in right now. And this play confronts the whys and wherefores of that pretty directly, the kind of underbelly, the other side, if you will, of the American dream. And it's something we're kind of constantly having a conversation and argument about. So I hope that it's staying with people that way and thinking of the stories that we're telling about ourselves and this kind of idea of what it means to be an American at a crisis point in our history that's only gotten kind of more intense with the development of the situation that we're in now.
And I've got two things to bounce off of that. First one, Michelle Lorraine says, I would pay serious money, maybe, to hear Tony sing. I don't know if that's
Okay, depending on the size of that particular donation, will determine how much I embarrass myself and to how many people.
Yeah, we'll talk. Send us, we'll email.
Let's talk offline about that.
And then going back to what you're saying about, hoping to bring this back in the summer, somebody says, with the show hoping to resume this summer, to the actors, how do you approach keeping a story and your respective characters fresh and present while you're social distancing?
I don't know if you saw the show, but these are all pretty socially distant people. If you really want to get in the headspace of some of these nut jobs, this is boy, not being able to see or talk to people. Really going to that's going to get you pretty close to the end zone. What with at least with Mr. Cholgosh, that's for sure. Like I just a lot of time alone, listening to the voices in your head, and seeing what fun contributions they might have. But also, I mean, I presume, you know, obviously, if we were going to pick it up again in the summer, we'd get to have some rehearsal time, and I'm sure the thing I'm most curious about for would be what parts of, you know, there's some very difficult musical parts of this show, and so I'm curious to see what are the things that take the most refreshing to get back to good. It's you know, not it's not really a value judgment as much as it is just a morbid curiosity of like,
Oh, the gun song.
I wonder how that gun song is going to do after a few months of no gun song.
Practice your barbershop quartet, please.
Tony, somebody says they're going to start a GoFundMe in order to get you to sing. So we'll see.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Let's put a big dollar amount, and I will belt any number they ask.
And speaking of money, might as well give a little plug right here on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You'll see a little QR code. Feel free to scan that. Take you right to gamtheater.org/donate, and everything is appreciated. So back to questions here. This one got a lot of traction in the chat. Kadia Ramos says, how do you think Assassins speaks to white privilege and the fact that most of the characters felt they were owed recognition or gratitude so much that they murdered to get it?
Great question.
It's a big one. Yeah. Anybody?
I mean, I think the show speaks. Oh, sorry, Gabe, I've cut you off.
Oh, no. I mean, that's something I think I noticed really early on. I actually, I did not talk to the person directly, but a friend of mine talked to a Black actress who said she doesn't like the show because it is so much sort of this entitled white thing. But I actually think the show is very critical of that, obviously. I don't think the show is like saying this is right. But I do think there is something to it. I think it goes, again, maybe it's just my opinion, like it is my opinion. My like fixation on this very American thing where I think white people are told you can do anything, and have been for a very long time, specifically white men. And I think that sort of feeds into this idea that if you're owed something already, it doesn't take as much to tip you over into, well, I'm owed this. What do I need to do to get it if I'm not getting it? That's, yeah.
And just like Hamilton, that uses African Americans to play George Washington and Jefferson. I've seen some predictions online when I was rehearsing this that were from colleges in the South. So you had an African American student playing John Wilkes Booth, and it was interesting, and it reminds you that it's the feelings behind it. So I think anybody can play these characters, and mine was originally a male character. So it's female. So yeah, I think it's a very flexible show, and it has a lot to say. But yeah, when whites play it, certain things come up, and when non-whites play it, certain things come up. So whenever you change, the character's initial casting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the back Gabe's, point up. It's the idea, the idea behind privilege is that I automatically, by virtue of certain right of birth, external circumstances, things, however we want to phrase it, we have the right to certain things. The big song in this, of course, is everybody's got the right to be happy. Everybody got the right to their dreams. But that right is certainly inculcated in a certain kind of class of people. And obviously we see with the Ballad of Booth, what that meant on the eve of the Civil War and then how that carried through. So I think it's a very powerful indictment of that idea, and that they're a privileged culture, in a sense, that says that I have the right to these things by virtue of the way I look externally, or even though many of them come from very, very different backgrounds. And then there's economic privilege that gets actually questioned very, very clearly in this. And the character certainly of Cholgosh, which is probably the one that, before his act of violence that we take with the most sympathy, in his scene with Emma Goldman, et cetera. And that was definitely, there's a class of people in this that are economically disadvantaged, and at the time, because of their ethnicity, were certainly not privileged like they say Guiteau might have been, or Booth certainly was. So yeah, I think it's very powerful and a very complicated play to look at today with looking through that particular lens.
And Tony, another question in for you from Gail Hulbert. You may have heard of her, may know. She asks, what is it like directing a musical versus, directing a non-musical play? How is that different for you?
Yeah, to be very honest, it's not very much different at all. I didn't approach this in any way different than any other play I've ever directed. And I directed a lot of plays that have had lots of music in them, not to this extent. But where, kind of where I needed where we all needed the most help in that, we have a musical director. We have Lila, who's here with us, and then all the great musicians that we had working on it. And Millie has been, really close by my side since we started talking about this probably a year ago now. In terms of translating where my kind of ignorance got in my way. But at the same time, I think it was a great advantage to come at this particular work, not from necessarily a traditional musical theater background, because I don't think it's a traditional play that would be advantaged by taking a traditional stance on it. So coming at it as if it's another kind of play, it's a very epic piece. It's like kind of directing a Brecht play or even a Shakespeare in a lot of ways. So I felt that I've got certainly I've been privileged to work on a lot of that stuff in my life, and that came in very handy. And I think a kind of alternate perspective on this particular work made for a very, and with this group of people, let me just say that first, I was talking to a friend recently about what makes a great director or what makes a room great. And I think this room was incredibly great because I think we had a culture of the best idea wins. And we have these incredible artists in the room that can help us all get together and make the best idea, whether it came from me or Lila or Millie or one of the actors or somebody on crew who just had a great great clarity around a particularly powerful storytelling moment. Let that happen. Let the evolution of it happen through the collaboration. And I think you do that. I don't think there's a lot of difference, especially if you have the right people in all the jobs, and we certainly did with this group and do.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna move along. Oh, well, Gail says, I know I'm biased, but you did a spectacular directing job.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Eden says, I love seeing Tony do jazz hands. That the whole experience is worth it just for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's another GoFundMe. You can't do that live. We're gonna make money off that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Angeline Marie says, what was your experience working in the round? I can only imagine how difficult it would be to not upstage others as well as yourself.
Actors?
Yeah, that was the hardest transition, I think, coming from the rehearsal hall to the performance space was, Eden actually hits the nail on the head there, is you had to know the very few spots on stage that were good to stay still in. And there were maybe 3 or 4 of those on either side of the stage that were sort of good landing grounds, a spot you could really plant and do some singing or do some talking from, and you wouldn't really be cut off from anyone. And then if you were anywhere else, you had to be sort of always turning. You had to find a way to justify that you were a person who just loves to rotate ever so slightly. In Minnesota, when I was at school, they call it the Guthrie turn, because anytime you had to turn around on stage, you had to make sure you were doing it so that everyone on the thrust could see you make the full rotation. And the sort of the same thing in the GAM. There was a little bit of a GAM 360 you had to get good at, which was making sure you went to the smallest corner first, so that if there was someone tucked in those back ends, you were making sure they got some face and some dialogue, and that you wouldn't be cutting off, well, in my case, not that many people, but mainly you, Helena.
I'm much shorter than Michael, so a lot of upstaging.
Yeah. I tried to making Cholgash more and more scared of you as rehearsal went on, just like I just further back so everyone can see her. further back. Maybe he's more nervous. You know what? Even more nervous.
I gotta say, I love working in the round. I think a lot of times one of the things that we get caught up in sometimes as theater practitioners is trying to control what the audience takes in. Especially in a proscenium, this is the story we're telling, and we know that the vantage point is pretty much from one side. And in the round, you are telling a story that some people are seeing one thing and some people are seeing another thing. So you have a little less control of it, which I think makes it a little bit more of a personal experience, and a little bit more immediate too, which is personally why I like it. I find it exciting because because of that. It's a little less control. You just can't quite make sure that everyone's seeing exactly the same thing, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah, makes it so that you got to go see it multiple times.
That's
It's
right.
good from all angles. Here we get another question right here. Amy Prothero, I apologize if I just butchered your last name. It says, when you researched your historical character, what did each of you think they would accomplish by murdering the president? Well, each of the characters, obviously not actors.
For me, this is Amanda here, played Squeaky. For me, I think she just wanted to be heard desperately. And well, she accomplished that, didn't she? But I don't think in the ways that she wanted to. What I thought was really interesting in research was that she hadn't decided on the day that she was going to particularly shoot the gun or use the gun, and then you come to find out that she had discharged the round in the gun, and therefore it didn't go off. But I do think, as opposed to many of the other characters, celebrity wasn't a goal of hers. I think she wanted to accomplish being heard on her environmental stance. And what's interesting about doing research in a play is that sometimes the script doesn't fit it doesn't mesh. So in the play, her goals seem to be more around Charlie's goals and in line with his goals, but in reality, she was trying to take a stand on the redwoods in California. So not sure if I answered your question, but that's just a little bit of the research versus diving into what's actually present in the script.
Already, anybody else want to hop in on that one? Any other assassins in the audience?
Yeah, I think Bick was so broken, and he was so worried about he touched on just about everything. It was inflation. It was, he uses the line, grandma's living in packing crates and sewage closing Jersey beaches. Everything kind of got to him at that particular point. He was irrational. He was broken. And the research showed all of the tapes he made, different people, and then what he tried to do, which he actually got onto the plane. He tried to crash the plane into the White House. He actually got onto the plane, killed 2 pilots, and then couldn't understand why the plane wouldn't fly. He was just so broken at that particular point that his capacity for rationality was gone at that point.
All right, and before we, I don't see any other questions at the moment, but before we hop off, I do want to ask if Suri or Jessica Chase or any of the other crew wants to say a few words just about what the experience was like for you guys going into this.
Hi, sure. I had never worked backstage on a musical of this caliber before, so it was really cool to learn from the stage manager, Robin, who has done a lot of musicals. But it was just a really great experience. I unfortunately wasn't there for a lot of the table work, which I was kind of bummed about. But yeah, it was really neat. It was great.
Suri, anything you want to stack onto that?
Sure. So I just graduated college in December. So I am a new like fetus, like emerging into the world. But something I sort of like latched onto, especially during table work, was this idea that a lot of the assassins, particularly I'm thinking of like Hinckley and maybe even to an extent people like Cholgosh, or how the way that the play presents it, is that you're doing it for like someone in particular, or like you're speaking for someone in particular. Like I'm doing it so Jodie Foster can like recognize who I am, and it's like this idea of like speaking for people and like creating these really grand and scary gestures for like the greater good of what people want. And I think that was really a scary thing that I noticed, and I don't know if that can ring true for anyone else, especially the people who were acting. I don't know. But yeah, it was really incredible to be in this room and to listen, and I am very honored that I was able to be a part of it, for sure.
Awesome. Ooh, I'm sorry, did I just cut you off?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Surrey really, the whole stage management company has been so sweet to us, and really, we would not be running without them. They saved our butts many times. So they're the best.
Round of applause, mini round of applause. I'm going to wrap things up with one last question from Deb Martin. Deb says, does each actor or creative team member have a particularly favorite or a goosebumps moment in the show? And if so, what is it?
Oh, I can answer that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine is the aftermath of Oswald as soon as he assassinates, and then we hear the news commentators coming on. It just, no matter how many times I've done the show, or or just how many times I sit in the audience and watch it, it just gets to me. When I did the show at URI, we had a film kind of thing going on, so they would they'd show clips, they showed slides of it every single time, without question. It's that one.
Yeah, I gotta second that too. I mean, that's as my character's main goal, that's pretty much what I wanted to have accomplished. And so, some level of grand, and at the same time, every night I had to walk out on stage and revel in that moment. It was one of the it's a terrible thing to do. It's a terrible thing, and it got me every single night. So yeah.
Well, I have to pile on that one too, because for me, the perfect convergence of the music and the message happened when the gunshot went off. We hear Walter Cronkite, and then we hear cracking chords that lead into the final Hail to the Chief, which we've been playing with, screwing around with the whole time in the play, and finally we have a version that feels more essence of what we expect Hail to the Chief to sound like. So to me, there's every single time this chilling thing of thinking, I don't know if we can get through this. This is so profound and so hard. And of course, it's very resonant for all of us going through what we're going through in the world right now.
For me, listening to Tom ask, we have to trust like little children, but wake up in the night, and especially our last show, that just kind of sat with me like a brick in my stomach. It did every night, but it's a chilling moment, and that monologue definitely gave me chills every night, Tom. So
I really loved and hated the very end of Something Just Broke, when it goes back into everybody's got the right. It's such a slap in the face from this beautiful, mournful song, and then it's back to this, celebration of awfulness.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, and Something Just Broke. There's every time we sang the line, for me personally, "Fix it up fast, please." Yeah, till it's just smoke. I mean, like, that's what everyone in this country, I feel, when we're really agitated or upset about what's going on. We just want it fixed. We want it to we want everything to be unified, and because right now there is no unity. It feels many in this day. So it's like we're just screaming it, like, fix it, please. And every time we did that, I would feel like this goosebump. Yeah.
I was gonna say the same thing. Every time that line happened and something just broke, for the piano, there was a little less that I had to be thinking about, so I could really listen to everyone singing too. And that was a moment where everyone came in. So without fail, I would always get goosebumps because of the message, like Chris was saying, and just the, I don't want to say lack of music, but having the focus really be on the singing and the lyrics and that message after everything that had happened in the play beforehand.
You know, my favorite moment, and unfortunately, the audience will never see this, is was when we were working the end of Act One, and the professionalism and how great Gabe was, working again and again and again, lifting him into the air so we could, you know, hang Gateau, was so. It just really moved me on how incredibly hard everyone was working to get that moment, from director to actors, but nobody ever, it was never negative. It was never anger. No word was ever spoken negative. It was work, 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 and especially Gabe, who had to keep going up into the air and everything. I just thought it was absolutely a moment which will define that show because of how we work together as a cast and a crew.
That was my favorite moment. Hanging Gabe. But for the reasons Tom said, you know, it was, and also listening to people react in the audience to that, and also feeling how much they hated us when we launched into the reprise at the end. You could feel it, you know, the confusion and the anger, and you could just feel their emotion. And I thought, oh, we did our job.
All right. Anybody else? Last call. All right, Tony, I'm gonna pass it over to you for last words. If there's anything you want to throw out into the world right now.
I do. I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us, those of us in the cast and crew, and thank you for giving us your time, and anybody out there who sent in questions and is listening to us. And I hope you know, like I said, we're working hard to all the stuff you had. For those of you who didn't see the show, we're hoping to. You know, you got some spoilers today, unfortunately, but hopefully you'll forget them in a couple of weeks, and then when we can come back together sometime this summer and get this thing up again and show you this great play, Resident for right now, and great work. In meantime, to piggyback off what everyone else was just saying, I think the line that will resonate with all of us for the next few weeks as we go through this together is working together to quote Mr. Sondheim, fix it up fast. And I think we will. So stay healthy, stay strong, stay positive, and support each other. And thanks for being a part of this, John. Thank you, Gail. Thank you for setting all this up. And we'll be back to you with a song pretty soon, I think. Thank you, Eden. So look out for that very, very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Are we still live? Okay.